the content of your theology, then it seemed to me that heaven and hell pretty much hangs on chance. I mean, honestly, it's not a coincidence that most people born in Muslim countries end up believing in Islam, and most people born in Hindu countries end up believing in Hinduism. Yeah, there's some exceptions, but statistically, you tend to kind of adopt whatever your culture teaches. And so it seemed to me that if heaven and hell depends on the content of your theology, then it's kind of a luck of the draw. If you're born in the right place at the right time, raised in the right family, or come in contact with the right person who, because of their good arguments and personality, persuades you, well, then you're in. But if you happen to be born at the wrong place at the wrong time, raised in the wrong family, or confront the wrong kind of Christian, well, then you're lost. It's kind of a luck of the draw. You might as well believe in the God who sort of predestines some people to go to heaven and some people to go to hell, because it comes to pretty much the same thing. And that just struck me as so inconsistent with a God who I was also taught loves everybody. I had trouble putting these things together. I asked the question about babies. What about babies? You know, do they all go to hell because they don't consciously believe in Jesus Christ? And what about people who are mentally incapacitated? You know, do they go to hell because they didn't believe in Jesus Christ? And I was told, no, they get kind of a free ride, which is not the traditional view of the church, by the way, but that's a different sermon. This is kind of a new thing that's happened in the last 100 years. They all get a free ride that's Ali Ali in free for them because they couldn't help it. Well, I'm thinking, well, how come they get an exception clause, but not the people who never really had a plausible chance to hear and believe in the gospel? You know, they meet some jerk Christian who turns them off to the kingdom, and now they're going to go to hell for it. Well, they've got a plausible excuse too. What is it? Is it a curved scale or not? I want to know here. I couldn't make sense out of that. And then what really screwed me up is I was taught early in my Christian life, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 says that God is delaying his second coming because he doesn't want anyone to perish, but he wants all to come to repentance. I thought, so the Lord has taken 2,000 years because he wants to give everyone a chance to come in. Yeah. That's what the verse seems to say. But it doesn't work that way. In fact, percentage-wise, the longer God waits, the greater the percentage of human beings who are going to hell if, in fact, you're saved on the basis of the package of theology that you adopted. I mean, just do the math. In fact, I did the math. Here, I'll show you. I do all the work for you. That's what they pay me for. Look at it. There is today 153,000 people are going to die. Will it be one of us? Isn't that amazing? 153 people are going to die today. If optimistically, and this is very optimistic, 1 out of 5 are Christian. Because that's about the number of people who answer a poll by saying that they're Christian. Now, if 1 of 5 of them are actually true, genuine, sold-out believers, I'd be surprised. But let's just keep it simple. If 1 out of 5 are saved, that means today 30,600 people are going to go to heaven. Yay! But 122,400 are going to go to hell. So it follows logically, my brain always screws me up, but I can't help it. But it follows logically that the longer God waits, the more he loses. So what's with this argument that he's waiting to get more? It's not working that way. The longer he waits, in fact, the ratio gets worse and worse and worse. And see, even if that doesn't bother you, it bothers a lot of people like me, and it bothers a lot of people who aren't believers. In fact, this is one of the number one objections that I face when I go to college campuses and do debates and talks and things like that. This obstacle, it seems so inconsistent with a God of love. Couldn't he done better? It seems like bad pedagogy. The majority of people, vast majority of people are going to be lost. It just doesn't make sense if you're also saying that God is a God who wants everyone to be saved and loves everybody. And so for many people, it's a deal breaker. So I want to think about this issue. Are there few that are saved? This is my way of making sense out of this. You can have a different way of making sense out of this. Just hear me out. I always give people the permission to be wrong. That's okay. But here's how I process stuff. Just join me in processing stuff. And then at the end of this, I'm going to turn it around and get to the main point that Jesus is getting at in this passage. There's 5 basic considerations that I think you need to pay attention to make sense out of this, okay? We're going to think aloud here. Number 1. I think it's an undeniable biblical truth, as unpopular as it is in our hyper-tolerant age. It's an undeniable truth that Jesus is the only way into the kingdom. The door, in fact, is narrow. Jesus said, I am the way, singular. There's not many ways, there's one, the way. I am the truth, I am the life. No one goes to the Father except through me. Religions can't save you. I know this is very unpopular today. Aren't all religions good, and don't they all lead to God? And if you're just sincere, isn't that good enough? Look, I've taught world religions for 16 years. I've read all the holy books. There's a lot of good stuff in them. There's a lot of true stuff in them. There's a lot of insightful stuff for them. Wonderful. But they can't save you. All the religious books in the world, all the religious doctrines in the world, all the religious deeds and sacrifices and works in the world can't save you. Only Jesus Christ can save you. Look, think of it like this. All sin is sin against God, ultimately. We do sin against one another, but ultimately all sin is against God. And that means the only one who can forgive us our sins and relieve us of the debt that we incur is God. It's kind of like this. If you owe me $1,000 and you can't pay it, the only one who can let you off the hook is me. And you can read all the books on debt relief you want and all the books on financial stewardship you want, and they're probably true and they're probably good, wonderful, but it's not going to reconcile you to me because you owe me $1,000. The only one who can let you off the hook is me. So also, the only one who can let us off the hook in terms of our sin against God is God. And you can read a lot of books with spiritual wisdom and spiritual insight, but they don't reconcile you to God. Only God can reconcile you to God. And he did it by becoming a human being. And that human being's name is Jesus Christ, and dying on the cross for us. That happened once. Jesus is not just one of the great gurus of the universe, one of the wise people in history. He's not an archangel sent down from heaven. He's the God of the universe. He's the King of all kings. He took on human flesh and died on the cross to reconcile us to God, and that happened once. Jesus is the forgiveness of God incarnate. And so if you want to be reconciled to God, it has to be through Jesus Christ. Now, I know right now, some of you listening to me in the auditorium and iPod and others are saying, what a narrow-minded bigot! How intolerant! What a prima donna! Aren't you aware that we're enlightened these days, and we know that all roads lead to God and all religions lead to God, and what's true for you is not true for somebody else, and we all have our own truth, and yada, 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 yada. I get that all the time at college campuses and other places. Okay, let's think about this for a moment, okay? Put on your thinking caps. Whatever you believe is going to be narrow. Because to believe something is to believe that something is this and not that. That's narrow. You're saying everybody else who disagrees with you is wrong. There's only one thing that this thing holding up my sermon notes is. It's a stand. Now, you're free to think it's an aardvark or an orangutan if you want, but it's a stand. It's not a giraffe. It's not the Empire State Building. It's not Mars. It's not a subatomic particle, though it has subatomic particles, of course, but it's not itself a subatomic particle. There's an infinity of things it's not. There's only one thing that it is. And so it's a very narrow belief to think that this is a stand. How narrow? Think of all the other things it could be. Well, yes, it could be, but it's not those. If it was an aardvark, you'd have to feed it, but no one feeds the stand, for example. I'm just being philosophically sophisticated here. All beliefs are by definition narrow, including the belief that all roads lead to God. That's a very narrow belief. You could be wrong. In fact, most people throughout history have thought you were wrong. It's a very narrow belief. If you're right, everybody else who disagrees with you is wrong. How narrow, how intolerant, how bigoted of you. It's very much like disagreeing about how to get to Texas. If you want to go to Waco, Texas, how do you get there? I might say, well, take 35W south. 35 south. So 35W south is a contradiction. Take 35 south. I don't know. Someone else may say, take 94 east. Someone else may say, oh, you guys are so narrow. Don't you know that all roads lead you to Texas if only you're sincere? Well, maybe. But see, you might be right, you might be wrong. If you're right, we're wrong. But your belief is not more broad-minded than our belief. It's just as narrow. You're making a truth claim. See, folks, what makes a person open-minded or broad-minded is not what they believe, because all beliefs are by definition narrow. What makes a person broad or narrow-minded is why they believe it and how they believe it. If you hold your belief irrationally and in a stubborn way, and you're not willing to listen to other people, you're narrow-minded. Even if you're right, you're narrow-minded. You just got lucky and happened to believe the right thing. But if you hold